You start to bore people, that's your fault.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone, good evening. Welcome to the second episode of the Shaherald Friday Nights with Mike. And I'm very glad and pleased and blessed to present, Michael again, once again, up on the stream. And today, what we'll be discussing mainly is about his challenges, the challenges that he faced before and after embracing Islam. So you have to understand why the challenges that he faced are quite actually big, because I feel because Michael, coming from a Discal's Carmelite monk vocation before, and which he spent 8.5 years studying about Christianity, Catholicism mainly, and to make that big decision in his life to take the leap of faith and to follow his heart to embrace Islam, despite all the how the media is portraying Islam in such a way. Yeah, and for him to even to come up here today to share with you his challenges, I believe they're also quite, not many people have that courage to come up to say more. So we're thankful and grateful to have him on the show today. So I would like all of you to, let's invite Michael up today. And you see here, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Michael, brother Michael.
Walaikum salam.
Salam Jumaat. It's a Friday, so he's already near the mosque. He's actually at the car park, yeah, in
That's
his
right.
car. Yeah. And after today's stream, he will go for his prayers. So, Brother Michael, please share with us, um, were your challenges before embracing Islam? Maybe you can share with us, like, during your journey while discovering about Islam, there might be some scriptural um, things that challenge your past faith as a Catholic. Maybe you can start with that, and afterwards, we see how it goes along the way, where you other challenges that you can bring in to the table. Yeah.
Well, first off, Brother Harold, I want to thank you for allowing me to be on this live stream again. And for everybody who tuned in last week to that long discussion. I was just saying to Brother Harold before, people ask me all the time how I came to Islam. And, it's, do you want the short version or the long version? And they say the short version, but the short version even is a long version. So it's quite a story to go through. So I had to, again, alhamdulillah, Allah led me to Islam. So again, thank you all for tuning in last week. Sorry for the hour and a half. I didn't realize it until the last minute. So when it comes to my challenges with scriptural things before I accepted Islam, I guess the first thing that I definitely say that I looked at was, the divinity of Jesus. Of course, again, just to catch up with where I left off to bring it into this, I was looking at as I said last week at the very, very end, I was looking into the Bible and the Qur'an and really comparing them the best I could without any kind of bias. I was pretty much not comfortable with accepting the teachings of Jesus anymore. Not all of his teachings, but certain teachings that the church was, of course, telling me that were the truth and that I had believed were the truth. So, again, I wasn't listening to the imam, and I put aside his voice, and I put aside, the everything in my mind about what the church told me or what the priest told me. The monks told me. And I want to just look at the Bible and Qur'an, honestly. So the first place that I really started was on the divinity of Jesus, of course, just naturally where I began. And when I really started to, of course, with almost 8.5 years in the monastery and all the verses that I had been studying for all those years, and I thought I knew everything. I'm not going to lie. Like, I thought I had all the evidence and proof for the divinity of Jesus. And as I said, when I first started reading the Quran, and, I had been known that Muslims, didn't believe that Jesus wasn't God. But when I really started to look at the Bible at this point, with, again, as the best I could without being biased, in light of the Quran, the way that I saw the divinity of Jesus is most of these verses on his divinity could really be misinterpreted or interpreted. What I mean is, for example, in the Gospel of John, there's a number of, not explicit verses, but implicit claims to divinity. Explicit would be like, Jesus saying I'm God. Implicit would be more, other ways that are not direct, they're indirect, that could be taken as, you could take them as Jesus is God or Jesus is not God. So when I started to go more into the early church fathers, normally the early church fathers are up to about the seventh council. In the church, you have seven councils, the seven great councils, the ecumenical councils, and all the fathers from the last council all the way until the time of Jesus. These are the great fathers. Well, the first ones are actually the apostolic era, but regardless. So when I started to actually get more into that and look at these verses and actually look at them in context, I really could not believe that Jesus was God. I mean, next week we'll be talking about the divinity of Jesus and did he say he's God? And again, I'm going to just go through everything that I have in my book that I wrote. Did Jesus say I am God or worship me? And go, one by each one and how I came to that conclusion and leave it at that. So I don't want to go into too much detail on that. So for me, though, it took me a while to get past Jesus being God or Son of God or the Trinity. I'm not going to lie. The Trinity actually was really, okay, not that it didn't have a place in my heart at one point, but, it was something that I always kind of had a hard time understanding. Now, I would never say that I had doubts back then in the monastery about the Trinity, but I definitely, when I looked at it later towards the end of my monastery days, and after I accepted Islam, it's like it really just. I really honestly don't know how I believe that. Like really, it's really just. It's not. I respect if Christians want to believe that. I have no problem with that. To your religion, to you be your religion, to me be my religion, as Surah Kafirun. So, completely respect that. It's fine. On the day of judgment, we'll find out, the truth. But so overcoming the Trinity for me, especially once I started looking at, like with the Trinity, for example, when I started to look at, you know, Jesus, Jesus prayed, Jesus called God, God, without
Yeah.
calling himself God in the same context. You know, what is eternal life? The apostles asked Jesus, what is the eternal life in John's gospel? Eternal life is to know, excuse me, is to know you, the only true God. You, talking to God, to know you, the only true God. And Jesus, speaking about himself now, the one whom you sent. So, there's many verses in the Bible, in the New Testament, where Jesus definitely, in my study of the Trinity and coming to peace with this, where, Jesus just made a lot of distinction, where he didn't say, eternal life is to know you, the only Father, and you sent the Son. No, he says to know you, the only true God, and Jesus, whom you sent. He doesn't call himself the Son, the Word, the Word of God, the Son of God, the eternal Logos. He doesn't say anything like this. He makes a complete distinction. So that was one thing that I definitely focused on for me. And there's many verses in the New Testament, not just in the Gospels, the New Testament, but especially in the Gospels, where I found peace with. And again, Brother Harold and I will go into a lot more detail with that at some point when we do a show on the Trinity and Tawheed. Then when it comes to the sonship, again, took me a while, but came to peace. But for me, it definitely was the crucifixion, resurrection. I'm not gonna lie, the crucifixion, resurrection was definitely my hardest thing. You would think it'd be this. You'd think it'd be Jesus being God, and it was hard. Jesus's divinity, but for me, it was definitely the crucifixion because people think that Jesus being God is the center of Christianity, and it's a part, but it's not the center. The center of Christianity is the Paschal mystery. The death on Good Friday, the resurrection, and the ascension. All three make up the Paschal mystery of Jesus' mission, according to Christianity, obviously. So for me, that was definitely the hardest. Took me quite a lot of not just, thinking, reasoning, looking at the Bible and the Quran, but it was definitely a lot of praying as well and reflection and just silence and really just, letting God speak to me in my heart kind of thing. Because for me, I really believed it. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I really believed in that, especially because when Lent came around for, in the monastery days, it was Holy Week in the Catholic Church. It was a very penitential week in our monastery. And, I always had, if somebody were to ask me, well, what was my favorite feast day in the church? There's a lot of feast days. What's your favorite day to celebrate? My day was Good Friday. I had a special devotion to the cross, and I really believed it. And I really was convinced it was the truth. And it really took me months and months to come to peace with this. And when I knew that the Muslims had, when I was looking into Islam, I knew that the Muslims were, they believed that Jesus wasn't dead on a cross or risen from the dead. And I'm not gonna lie, the first time that I actually heard that, I laughed. Of course, out of ignorance, but I laughed. So, because it just seems so absurd. But again, Brother Harold and I will be going into a show on how, again, how I came to Islam through the Bible and the Quran is, it's nothing to do with how I feel. It's nothing to do with my opinion. It only has to do with the Bible and the Quran. The Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Quran. I has nothing to do with how I feel, because if I felt like, really, like I'm honestly, if I felt, if I went by how I felt, I never would have gave up the crucifixion, because like it was the one that really held me down the most. Like I was at this point with looking at the crucifixion back then. I really took me, as I said, I can't exaggerate. I can't, I keep on repeating this part, but because of the truth, it took me a long time to come to peace with this. Because
Yeah.
but just to briefly, I'll give you one little, again, Brother Harold and I are going in detail on different shows with the crucifixion, because my book's in editing right now, Crucifixion, Fact or Fiction. So I don't want to go too into detail, but I'll break it down really quick. Just one quick thing. Um, when the when I really looked at the crucifixion, you know, what is the reason? What is the reason for the crucifixion? What is the essence of the crucifixion? I mean, most even Catholics who go to church every day don't really understand the theology of the crucifixion. So the actual theology of the crucifixion would be Jesus, who before he was Jesus, he eternally existed with the Father in heaven, in union with the Holy Spirit. And they had three divine persons who were 100% God, 100% God in everything equally, power, might, glory, but one God, yet one. At one time, the Father sent the divine Son, the Word. At this point, he's the Word. And he was the Word of God the Father. And at a certain point in history, the Word, who at this point, again, the Son, the Word, he was eternally divine, as I said. So the reason for Jesus' birth, I mean, everything in Christianity, this is why for me it was so hard. Because everything in Christianity revolves around the crucifixion, the resurrection, the ascension. Because the reason for Jesus' birth, for his incarnation, for God the Father, according to Christian theology, God the Father to send his divine word, the Son, into existence in the person of Jesus. Now remember, Jesus up until this point, you wouldn't call Jesus before. At this point, there was no Jesus. It's just that's the person that the Father chose to send his word or the Son into, the eternal word. So now at this point, you have the incarnation, where the word, of course, who's eternally divine, meets and unites with flesh. And at that point, you have at the incarnation, you have what's called the hypostatic union as well. And the hypostatic union basically is that Jesus was 100% God, because Jesus was 100% God, 100% man through the incarnation. So the reason for this, again, I'm trying not to go into too much detail because, again, like I said, but for me, this is this is like probably one of the bigger reasons I've really found peace. But the reason, as I said, for Jesus' birth is, of course, his death, his resurrection, and his ascension. So, like I said, when Jesus was born, of course, at this point, the reason that, of course, if you ask any of the church fathers in the early church, if you ask, Christian theologians today, and you say, well, why did the person on the cross have to be God and man? Because that's the whole theology behind it, is that because of Adam and Eve's sin in the garden and the fall and this veil and blockage and this wall now being put up between God and of course his creation, and now sin comes into the world, there's this wall and this division. So in order for that, of course, Adam, again, I think I might be going into too much, but Adam, of course, being man, right? Adam and Eve, they were men. And of course, in order for salvation to take place, you would have to have a God man. This is what all the great church fathers speak about. They speak about a God man, and the God man would have to be 100% God and 100% man. Man, because he represents us as people, as Adam, because we're the sinners. And God, because God alone can substitute, God alone can be pleasing in God's sight. So, as man, he's 100% man. Therefore, now again, looking in the person of Jesus, the reason for the crucifixion, being that he's 100% man, it's because he takes our place. He stands in our place as man because he was 100% man according to them. But God, because we can do nothing as actual men to make up for that sin that we commit. Therefore, he would also, Jesus now at this point, would have to be also 100% God, because the only thing pleasing to God is something divine. So he would, again, nowadays when I think about this, it's absurd to think about. But, back then when I was thinking about this stuff, for me, this is how I came to peace with this. So, how I came to peace with the crucifixion, again, because that was definitely my biggest, I can't even exaggerate how hard it was, because it was everything that I had known. And so, of course, in order for Jesus, for this redemption and crucifixion and resurrection to take place, Jesus would have to be God. Now, at this point, okay, so I've like, okay, again, I was just thinking in my own brain, like I'm going through my own thoughts. And so at this point, I'm pretty okay back then and I'm pretty convicted. I'm pretty sure that Jesus isn't God. And again, I'm not going to go into verses why. That's next week's video on that the divinity of Jesus. But I'm pretty sure Jesus isn't God, and I believed at that point that these verses were all proof for him not to be divine, but only human. And therefore, if I didn't believe he was God, why would I believe he's crucified? Because in order for him to be crucified at this point, he'd have to be both man and God, according to what I believe as a Christian, as a Catholic. So therefore, to this is what really began the overcoming, this reasoning process in my brain. So therefore, if I can't believe he's God, I can't believe he died for me, because in order for him to die for me, he'd have to be 100% God, 100% man. So then from there, I kind of move forward. But again, I told Brother Harold I keep this part short. So that's kind of how the beginnings, which again, as I said, soon we'll also be going through the crucifixion and things like this at further live streams.
Yep.
But
So
after I overcame it, I definitely found like I really I never had a problem with it again. Put it like that.
yeah. So just a quick summary
Mm-hmm.
of what you just said, so maybe the audience can get a wrap around everything.
Yep.
So brother Michael, what happened was he decided to take a closer look into the Bible, and he saw a lot of discrepancies with John as well, the Gospel of John, because it is where it really have a lot of verses that show try to make Jesus a divine being. And the reason why the church, he's just a summary of what he just said, is because why the church believes in that crucifixion and the divinity of Jesus is because in the Bible at the start, Genesis, God say, let there be light. He used words, he verbalizes it, and therefore the words are divine, correct? And therefore, because the words are divine in the incarnation, basically the birth of Jesus, the words became flesh when it meets the flesh of the Virgin Mary, right? And
Correct.
therefore Jesus is both man and God, right?
Yep.
And therefore when that happened, why can that also happen? Another reason the church gave was because of original sin, Adam and Eve, when they fall from grace, and we as the children of Adam are all bearing this sin of Adam. The only way we can be forgiven is if someone who has both the qualities of man and God in him, that can elevate that sin for us, and eventually bring all of us to heaven. So that person is Jesus, because he is the word made flesh, which is the incarnation, and he died for your sins, right? In summary.
Correct.
That's,
I'm surprised you remembered all that.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm just using my past understanding, studying in
Yeah.
Catholicism to help put that down. Yeah. But he find there's a lot of problems with that theological reasoning, and therefore we will share more why that is in the next few weeks. Okay, in the many other weeks we come next week, we're going to talk about Jesus, is he man or God, God, how to show in the Bible that he's not God, and other topics about whether crucifixion, did it really happen, so and so forth. So yeah, so that is his biggest challenge, which was overcoming that understanding from the start that the crucifixion was his was the whole reason why he became a Christian in the first place, because that not only touches him in terms of his feelings, but intellectually he had that understanding of Jesus, and therefore that was the biggest challenge for him to overcome, to deconstruct all that understanding entirely. Yeah. And am I right so far? Did I
Got
get
it. You got it.
it? Yeah. So fine. So okay, that is the first challenge that you face. One is the scriptural part of it. Then what are the challenges that you have before you became a Muslim? I'm just assuming that they are probably like maybe the Muslim lifestyle, was it a challenge? I don't think so because you're a monk. You probably had more.
Yeah, before. Well, before. I mean, as I said before last time, and my biggest, greatest difficulty was definitely giving up the life. Like really, my monastic life, and everything that I was doing in those days. Like, and I said something last week that I want to make clear. I said, because if I had become a Muslim, which I did think this, then it would, yeah. At this point, not even being convinced that I was going to become a Muslim, but just thinking about it. Um, I said, I was giving up all everything that I knew, and respect, education, teaching people, um, everything that I knew and I loved and I believed, to become Muslim, I'm just a nobody. But again, because I don't think last time I made clear, because I was thinking about that after I said it and I didn't make clear that when I did say that, it was at a time when I was thinking, it was an honest thought in my brain when I first was thinking about actually just reading about Islam, discovered in Islam, when I was an ignorant fool. But alhamdulillah, Allah guided me. I never regret it. But yeah, definitely before I became Muslim, as I said, the hardest thing for me, going through the biblical verses, and especially just not, like I said, and just not wanting to give up who I was. And then again, well, again, everybody has like this side of the, in their brain, it's like one half of my brain's like, well, this is who I am. I'm a Catholic. I'm, a monk, and I love this life, and I really did love this life. And at the same time, as I'm starting to read about Islam and look into it, I can see myself as a Muslim as well. But then again, is what I'm believing as a Christian true? And how do I know? And if I'm what I'm if I'm going to become Muslim, is that really the lifestyle for me? So, I mean, definitely, and which then, of course, took me into my own little self study, the Bible and the Quran, which then, of course, led me to Islam. So I wouldn't say I had too many biblical verses that were overly challenging. Like I said, I did have challenges, but it was more just giving up. Like I really enjoyed that life. Like trust me, the last person. This is the truth. I'm the last person anybody would have ever put their money on in a monastery, in Rome, anywhere. Last person that ever would have became Muslim, ever. It was a shock to me too.
So what was the cultural challenge that you faced? I believe you were not like the
Becoming
one.
Muslim.
Yeah.
Well, when I first accepted Islam, I mean, well, first thing that I did, of course, after my shahada was learn how to make wudu and the ritual purity, which, of course, I have a great respect for. Catholicism doesn't really have ritual purity. With the Catholicism, it was more going into the church. You're baptized, and that's like your purification. Going into the church, and you have the holy water font there, and you're supposed to put your finger in it and make the sign of the cross, and that's like a reminder of your baptism, basically. And your purification. You're pure now in the sight of God, even though you can still sin, but you are pure, and it's a reminder of that. So I really enjoy. I mean, I really found the wudu fascinating. Um, I'm not gonna lie. My first, I'm like you might not believe this, but I'm kind of like the antisocial type. I'm okay. I'm antisocial when it comes to new people. If I know you, I can talk for hours. But when I first meet people, I'm kind of quiet. I've always been like this. Like I like to look around and observe people. So when I first started going around the masjid, of course, I just like was very quiet and just looked at people and was observing. And I was kind of hesitant to actually talk to people. Like it was hard for me, even though I was a Muslim now. And everybody at the masjid where I did accept Islam, they all saw me. They all said hi, hello, hi, this and that. But I had to really like force myself to come out of that shell. Like there was actually certain points in early because I was the only white guy. I'm not gonna lie. Well, yeah, in the masjid where I first went to, I was the only white guy, and where I went, it was mostly Moroccans, Palestinians. There's a lot of Arab ethnicity, and it's not that I wasn't gonna leave Islam because of it, because I chose to be Muslim. I don't care what color or ethnicity I am, or other people are, but
Mhm.
it was definitely hard for me because I don't know. It's just like just for me, it just was hard, and they always like to talk in Arabic to each other, because you have like the old school people at that masjid who only talk Arabic, and they don't really speak too much English. And then you have their kids, or you have like the kids of the kids who they speak really good English and Arabic. So, but they were all friendly, like I said. They all, and of course the imam had told them how I accepted Islam and a little bit about my story. So they really respected me, and I always had great respect for them. But that's just a little thing that was hard, but I got over it. Like now I could care less um, about that. And again, like I said, it wasn't something that made me want to doubt or leave Islam, but it was definitely one of those hard things for me. And then of course, when it came to Salah and praying, um, I love the way Muslims prayed. Even when I was a Catholic and I was looking into it and looking at stuff on the internet, it was always something fascinating to me. So I didn't have any issues with actually praying 5 times a day, because in the monastery, as I told you, we used to pray the 7 hours of the Divine Office, starting from like the earliest hour was around 3:30, 4 a.m., which was matins, and then we would go 7 times throughout the day, not 7 times, not 7 prayers in a row, but throughout the day at different hours. And Compline was the end, which was, right before we went to sleep, about maybe 30, 45 minutes before we slept, around 10.
Mhm.
So for me, I already had a schedule of prayer. Praying was just something I did. So, I did,
Mhm.
and even in Catholicism, we used to, at least in my monastery, we did a lot of prostrations during Lent. Of course,
Mhm.
Lent is the season of the crucifixion, getting ready for Easter and resurrection, ascension. So we, because it's just like a part of the monastic tradition, like what monks do, monastic tradition, where we, it's like, we say, Lord have mercy, and we prostrate. Same way that Muslims, we pray when we go in sujood. Different words, different languages, Greek, Latin, but it's always something that I loved, put it
Mhm.
that way. So I never had an issue with praying 5 times a day.
Okay.
I would say though, well, I
Mhm.
guess one of the hardest things for me was excuse me, fasting. My first
Mhm.
Ramadan was really
Huh?
um,
Fasting.
yeah, fasting.
But I
Fasting.
mean, you fasted a lot, right, when you were a monk?
Yeah, but it's a different fasting. I thought that I knew what fasting was until I became Muslim.
Mhm.
So hermit monk fasting back in the monastery days. Now, of course, it's like a monastic tradition that goes way back in church tradition. We used to fast from the feast of the exaltation of the Holy Cross, which is in September, and we would fast from then, which is again like mid-September, let's say, right, mid-September, all the way until Easter Sunday. And of course, we would not fast on Sundays, because that was like the Lord's Day. It was a day of rest, so therefore we wouldn't fast. But normally, like, our monastic fasting was very, it's different than even like today with lay people, the way that Catholics fast. It's very like lax today in the church for lay people, people who go to church, and not really monks, hermits, priests, nuns. But the way that we fasted was, well, the way we fasted, we wake up, you know, again, 3:30, 4 a.m., pray. This is our fasting for the whole year, and from middle of September until Easter. Well, let's just say Easter's in the middle of April, just to give an example. Middle of September to middle of April, make it easy. So normally, what our fasting consisted of was after waking up at 3:34, we would do all kinds of other things, and then after doing those, we would have some toast in the morning, 6 days a week.
Okay.
Sunday, we'd eat normal. Then the next 6 days,
Did
again, mid September till April, mid April. just very frugal breakfast. No juice, just water, and nothing in between. Then we would have what's called supper, which is dinner, but let's just call it lunch because that's what Americans out here call it. So we then had lunch, and again, that was our biggest meal, even during fasting. And normally it consisted of, maybe we didn't eat meat either. Uh, Monks don't eat meat.
So
Hermits don't eat
vegetarian.
meat. Yeah, we didn't eat meat all their lives. Well, until they entered the monasteries. So they when they entered, they didn't. But before that, they did. So normally it would consist of, like lunch would be, fish, maybe string beans, um, maybe some corn,
Lentils.
and maybe fruit, but no snacks.
No.
And then, of course, from lunch until dinner, which would our dinner was usually around 7 p.m. From dinner, at dinner we would have a bowl of soup, a piece of bread, and water, and no sweets again. Like I said, and this was from mid-September until mid-April. So it wasn't not eating all day, but it was hard.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody enjoyed getting cake and ice cream Easter Sunday. Cake, ice cream, orange juice, apple juice, going back to normal kind of eating stuff. So in Holy Week, we just ate bread. That was probably the hardest for us in the monastery where we were. It was all bread Holy Week. Holy Week is the week leading up to the crucifixion and resurrection. And we just ate bread and water. And it was only one piece of bread. It was a loaf of bread, not one slice. One loaf of bread. Each monk had a loaf of bread, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and water, and that was it. So for me, fasting when I became Muslim, I'm thinking I was ready for fasting, but it was I found the Islamic fast to be a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Because at least in the Catholic fasting, it's hard, but and it's penitential and it's difficult. But the Islamic fasting for me was just it was hard. But alhamdulillah, after about a year, 2 years, 3 years, the Ramadan comes. And I'm not going to say it becomes natural even today, but it becomes a little bit easier year by year. I keep on telling some of my friends I can't wait until the year comes around because when I became Muslim, it was middle of summer when the days are the longest. So I didn't realize the calendar moved at this point. So I'm thinking, man, I can't wait till December comes around. When I only had to fast from like 6 a.m. until 4 p.m. I could do this. And it's cold because I like the cold. I'm more of the freezing temperatures rather than extreme heat. But alhamdulillah, I, again, I found it difficult, but it was a good difficult. It was something that was very beneficial and good for me.
Yeah. Just to add something here. I want to say that fasting. Okay, you know that a lot of Muslims, right? It's our tenet to fast. One of the pillars of Islam is to fast. So don't you think it's quite? I mean, like to the audience here that are watching, miraculous that all Muslims fast. And the monk here, ex-monk, former monk, is saying it's hard. But to them, it's like, wow, we're doing it every year once. So,
Well, a lot of these people, like a lot of, I don't know. I just think that maybe people who grow up as little kids, just learning how to fast.
yeah.
Not that it's not hard for, Muslims, not that it's not hard for, whatever country you're from in the world. Not it's Muslim countries. And, I just think if you're 5, 6, 7 years old and you're kind of learning little by little how to do this,
Yeah.
you got a little bit better practice than me.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
alhamdulillah, we have fasting. Like I said, it
And
was hard, but it was a good heart, a beneficial
good
heart.
heart. Yeah. I'm just want to ask, is the bread thing, okay, what I understand about that in the past was because meat was considered a luxury in Rome, and you kind of have to be rich, then you can have meat in your diet. So part of the fasting is to live a much more humble life. You remove meat from your diet, so you have bread. Is that correct? That's what the church
Yep.
gave
Yeah,
reason.
you're right. Completely correct. Yep. The wealthy and the rich people, they were able to afford meat. The poor people didn't. So therefore, monks, hermits, nuns, priests, from early in the church, it was, we're not following the wealthy, we're not following the poor, we're following the we're not following the wealthy, we're not following the luxurious, we're following the poor. Because Jesus, even in the Bible, came into the world poor and didn't have anything, and lived a very, very poor, simple life. Therefore, that's the kind of life we're going to live. That's why we didn't need it. But yes, brother, you're right.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, there's also different kind of fasting that you do, like fasting of the mind, not to look at stuff that are sinful, and other types of fasting, which as Muslims we also practice in Ramadan. Like, it's not just the food. I believe it's also trying to purify ourselves for the entire month of Ramadan, where we will recite the Quran more than ever before, and also try to refrain from things that are impure. I believe that's one of the things that we all do as Muslims. So yeah, talking about fasting now. Now let's move on to the next point. What are the challenges, like the family and the community, um, before and after? So before you became Muslim, was there a problem with coming out and say, like, to them, like, I want to be a Muslim? Yeah, do you
Well,
have that? Yeah.
first off, when it comes to my family, like my mother and father's side, I didn't even tell them I was Muslim until I was Muslim. That's number one. Uh, yeah, I don't need, because I kind of like, I told myself I'm not gonna listen to anybody's criticisms or compliments. But even like I said last week on when we were talking about the the people in the monastery where I was living, like I said, for the most part, excuse me, the monks over there where I was living, they definitely were okay. Like, of course, they told me I was being misguided, and I was possibly going through a stage, but they they told me come back anytime. They were even willing to let me go become Muslim, experience Islam. If I want to come back to them, I just go back. So, I mean, they're very good about it. I mean, the way they handled it was a lot better than the way some of my priest friends handled it, who are not Carmelites or lay people that I saw at church regularly. Like, I put it like this: when it came to like my priest friends or people in seminaries studying to be priests, or even the lay people who came to our monastery, there was two groups. Either they said, "Okay, well, that's a different adventure," or it became, just silence, or, like just silence because they thought I was wrong. And I'd say about 50-50. About half of them don't talk to me anymore, even though I have reached out many times. In the past, near past, I've reached out to the ones that did walk away from me. But what can you do? I don't really have to restore relationships with people who can't accept me for who I am. You know, I was a monk and you wanted to be my friend, and now I find something else to be true, and you walked away from me. I didn't walk away from you. I might have accepted a different belief system, but if we're friends, and friends are people who trust each other, then like, you should have been a little bit more supportive for the ones that did walk away. Again, priest friends, monk, some of the other monk friends. I had one problem with one of the monks after a while,
Mm.
where he really, he was getting kind of. He was always trying to. He was always trying to debate me, and trying to. Well, when are you coming back? We just want you to come back. You're a better Catholic. You're a better Catholic than you are a Muslim. There's no reason for like this. There was one out of the whole group, and he was quiet at first, but after a while, I guess he thought maybe I was gonna again be going through some transitional phase and just phase out of it. But I wasn't phasing out of it because I really believed Islam was the truth. So he actually sent me the one monk, and actually he's actually like one of the number one people in the monastery where I was living, where he was like, he wasn't my best friend, but he was a really good friend. Like, I had one other person that I connected with in the monastery, like really like friend, like this, my right hand man kind of dude. But the brother again, brother meaning monk friend, he was like my second in command. Like, we were good friends, but we weren't best friends. Yeah, one time he sent me a letter I'm not going to mention his name, but he sent me a letter after I was gone for about a year. And it was like this, you're condemned to hell. You should go get exorcism. It was really, I'm not going to lie, it was really mean. I was very, I mean, of course, I'm not going to lie, I was offended at first. I'm not, like any human being, I would be offended, right? Obviously. Yeah. But after a while, I really realized, well, he's just saying that because he's a monk. He's Catholic. Just like if I was a Muslim and I went and became a Catholic and somebody said something, that a Muslim friend of mine said something about me going back to being a Catholic. I'm just giving an example. If he says something mean that I find offensive, he's a Muslim, just trying to save his brother, just like that monk was trying to save his. So even though at first I was pretty upset about it, as I said, after a while, I really just, of course, that one and I specifically, after he told me I need to be exorcism, again, exorcism, for those who don't know, is that the devil, you've been possessed by the devil and literally possessed. And, you need to go through the ritual of exorcism with an exorcism priest. And I thought that was funny. But he did tell me I'm going to be in hell and I'm going to, there's no shot for me to be going to heaven and all this other kind of mumbo jumbo. It was a really long letter. It's about 5 or 6 pages. So,
wow.
And I definitely, and I did not write him back. I just left it alone. But when it came to, like I said, the priest friends, I've had some priest friends that, put it like this. I didn't have one Catholic priest friend or monk or lay person people tell me that I'm wrong. Obviously, they're going to tell me I'm wrong. They're Catholics, That's what you expect them to do. But so obviously they all told me I was wrong, but they were able to accept it and just live with it, And then when I became I was losing track of my thoughts. Sorry. So So the friends, that's it. That's the friends. So I had a bunch of different groups of people that, of course, would accept me or not accept me. And then, of course, when I became when I became Muslim, as I said, to go into my family now to speed it up a little bit. When I went into my family, again, absolutely nobody had any clue when I accepted Islam. And of course, after I accepted Islam, I told them. My mother, being my mother, she always was very supportive. I think I said this last time. I could, worship a stone. I could, be a Buddhist. I could be an atheist. I could be an agnostic. I could be a Catholic, Muslim. I could be anything in the world. And my mother always was the supportive one. So my mother was always good. Well, I'm happy for you. My dad, well, they weren't living together at that point. My family had divorced. So when I went to talk to my dad, of course, he's like, well, I hope you're not planning on, again, of course. I'm not laughing because I think it's funny it's kind of like funny when I think about it now, but back then I wasn't. Like, that's the thing. Like, the people who really bothered me back then, it really bothered me. But my dad, when I accepted Islam and I told him, he's like, really? Don't tell me you're going to go out to Afghanistan or Iraq and go fight as one of those what do you call them? You're gonna die Shaherald? No, he didn't say. He said martyr. He says, what are you gonna get 99 virgins when you go into heaven? Like, he started making fun of that thing. There was no respect. There were, it took him about a good 6 months to a year to really come to peace. But yeah, he really was shocked. He told me, even when I was going to go into the whole monk thing, he was not supportive. He said a bunch of really horrible things, which I cannot even quote the words he said when he heard I was going in monastery. And when I became a Muslim, of course, the same thing. Just a bunch of negative words. But now he's dead. But, until his death, he was very, okay, not that he wanted to ever know about Islam, even though I tried. But he definitely came to a peace. Well, this is who he is. He is my dad regardless. When it came to I guess my greatest battle with my family would definitely be my grandmother. Because when I got my grandmother, an old school Sicilian lady, off the boat, Italy, from the island, and she just because she's very pious, she's very, you know, she's like one of the only ones in the whole family who actually practices the Catholic faith, and she's like really she doesn't just go to church on Sundays, goes every day, prays the rosary every day, goes to confession every 2 weeks. Like, she's always been like this. So, and I was always like her pride and joy, when I was in the monastery, because it's like, oh, my son's in there. He's a Carmelite. He's going to be a priest soon. That's my grandson. And then when I told her that I became Muslim, it was like, really, she started screaming at me. And later on, she actually like just flipped. It was just like you turn on a switch of sweet old nice grandma, and then you turn it on to raging raging grandmother. So she started to go crazy. It was very difficult for her. Used to make sly little remarks all the time. Not that she had anything against Islam. That's not it. It was just the fact that I was of everything that I was doing for 8.5, 9 years, so as a in the monastery, and being in Rome, and traveling all over the world, and all this kind of stuff. So for her, it just was like, what? To do what? You gave up that for what? You don't believe Jesus is God because of what? Like, really? I'm so. And then when my first son was born, his name is Muhammad. When my wife and I were at the hospital, and she's well, she comes in to see him. It was like it was the next day after giving birth, and we're just sitting in the hospital. I stayed with my wife in the hospital, and she comes in, and she's like, well, looks on the board, and his name is, because the Muslim name that I took is Salahuddin, and his name on the board, in America they put that on this whiteboard, and the name was Muhammad Salahuddin Decero. Get my last name, Decero. And usually with Arabs, because my wife is from an Arabic country, usually with Arabs, they tend to put the father's name in the middle name. At least in here, I don't know everywhere else, but here in America, that's what they tend to do. So his name is Muhammad, my name, Michael, or Salahuddin, and then Decero. So when she saw Muhammad Salahuddin, she really well, I will never ever call him that. Like, she didn't call him this for over a year. She called him, Italian bambino, which means baby, my baby, bambini, my baby. So she called him bambino for a year, just over a year. She wouldn't even call him Muhammad. By the time my other son was born, Arma, which of course she couldn't even say, she calls him Omar, which is fine, whatever. But when my second son was born, she was okay with everything by this point. Like, recently we didn't, been able to go over there, and she doesn't mind giving the kids Eid gifts, and like being able to celebrate with her grandkids, Muslim celebrations. So that was actually like about 2 years ago. After 9 years of being Muslim, 2 years ago, she finally was like at the point, oh, okay, well, why don't you guys come over after you finish doing things, that you're doing? Come over at nighttime, have dinner. We have stuff for the kids, like gifts and toys and things like this. So now she's okay, alhamdulillah. Everything is completely fine. It took her a lot longer than I ever would have thought to adjust, but I don't blame her, I don't blame her. Yes.
MashaAllah.
Now, also, my mother, at one point she accepted Islam. I forgot to mention that last time. About my mother's been dead for about 7 months now from a neurological brain disease, and she, I again, I've always kind of like put things in her ear. My mother's never been the most strictest Catholic. My mother, I would never say like she was like my grandmother was, but she definitely did believe at least Jesus was God. I know for a fact she never believed the Trinity stuff. She even told me that, but she did believe all her life that at least Jesus was God. That's the only thing that she had any belief about. So I'd say about 3 years before she died, alhamdulillah, she came to Islam. But because of her illness, she wasn't able to, because her illness causes, uncontrollable movements, like body movements. So she can't really praise. Normally, when she prayed, I'd go over there, and she'd be in she was in like a lay down wheelchair and be behind me, and she couldn't talk because the disease she had took away her talking for the past 6 years. So when she did accept Islam, she couldn't talk. I mean, she would try, but it was broken. She wasn't able to fast. She wasn't able to really do anything. I mean, go Hajj. She
Mhm.
couldn't really wear a veil because she couldn't put it on, and my grandmother would really had a fit if she put on a veil. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It's funny because when my mother accepted Islam, she's like, don't tell your grandmother. My mother said about my mother accepting Islam.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
what about other challenges? I mean, like, just quickly, do you have like other like hard to find halal food or prayer places or places to take your wudu, or well, it is like menial stuff? But do you have this problem in the US or anything?
Well, in U.S., if you live in a big city, like I live in Philly, it's a really big city. If you live in New York, Chicago, I mean, any of the really big cities in the whole country, it's easy to find halal places. Um, it's easy to find halal stores, halal markets, masjids. I mean, even over here, like the part of the city where I live, there's not just like down the street from each other, but just this general area. There's at least 6 masjids
Okay.
that cover pretty good miles. So I don't really find it too hard to, and I never have, to make wudu, go pray at the masjid, um, halal food. I mean, of course, one of the things when I first accepted Islam, most people didn't know that, Muslims don't drink. So I always remember this one guy that I was working with him. I used to do construction back then when I first was accepted Islam, and he was a friend of mine. And back then, of course, being Christian, well, no, sorry. When I went to him, when I started working there, he was like, because I told him, the boss the guy that I was Muslim, and the guys always, they went out on Friday night. The crew from my job, the construction job, asking me if I wanted to go out on Friday and have a drink. This was my first like couple weeks after accepting Islam, and I did tell him, well, we don't drink, and so never asked again. I did have one job after that. It was a different construction job. My first construction job was working with Arabs, Muslims. So they understood. The second one was more Americans because it was a lot more money and benefits. And so when I was working with them, like the boss dude, the boss guy, he really, I told him that I had to go and pray on Fridays, and he's just kind of like, well, I don't know if we can do that. Like that's what he told me. I don't know if we can let you just go out every Friday and pray for an hour and come back. 15 minutes get to the masjid, 15 minutes come back. So um, I did take that job, and he understood. And after about 2 years, he did say to me, well, it's not really that big of a deal, because I've made it where my lunch was usually earlier, but I basically would spend 15 minutes longer on my lunch break just to go to the masjid.
Mm. For me, I mean, when I'm interviewed in my all my previous jobs, I just tell them that I'm a Muslim, so I have to go for my Friday prayers if that's okay. I'm okay with skipping lunch altogether, and just I mean, like, just take it like a fasting day, but you're not
Sure.
really fasting because you can eat snacks or something. So we so I'll do that. Just go to the mosque and I'll be back an hour and 15 minutes. Yeah, and I'll tell them like maybe I'll stay back later after work just to pay back for whatever time that I took that was extra, or come in earlier. So that's how I work around those stuff. Yeah. Most of them, if you are like honest about it at the start, I think they're quite cool with this arrangement.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah. So okay. What about okay? So other challenges. Okay. Do you have like any other trials that you can share? Like maybe Allah put before you. I mean, the moment you become a Muslim, I believe there are like a lot of people who are being tested by Allah. It's mentioned in the Quran like that. They think that, after they say they believe, that we will not test them. I think there's a verse in the
Well,
Quran like that.
I'm not gonna lie. When I accepted Islam, I was completely happy and at peace. And immediately after, I really it was nothing but it was like on cloud nine. But when I accepted Islam, I really wanted to go into studying, the Quran and Hadith and Sirah, learning Arabic, doing the best I can to know Islam more than I ever know Christianity. And it's hard, but with time, I started learning. One of the challenges for me would definitely be learning Arabic. I started to immediately like, there was a brother at the masjid where I, accepted Islam, and he's from another country. His English was, mashallah, really good. And he had a bachelor's and a master's degree in Arabic studies from this country. And his father was really good at English, so his English was like perfect. So he was just here doing tutoring in the masjid, and he was also one of the brothers who taught me how to make wudu and the self purification. Taught me how to pray, the right way, and make ghusl and all that kind of stuff. So, when he said Arabic, I'm like, well, where do I sign up? Because I really love learning languages, with the Latin and Greek. Back, learning Latin and Greek back then, and at the last year studying Hebrew. At a certain point, thinking about studying Coptic back then. Spoke fluent Italian back then. Still speak Italian, but spoke even better back then. Um, so, because when I started to learn, when he said Arabic, I'm thinking, well, I'm definitely gonna have to do this. Like I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. It's a lot harder than well, I'm sure you can imagine. You're Muslim,
Yeah.
so it's definitely difficult. But I mean, I'm not bragging when I say this. I'm just, Allah's given me a gift for
Mm.
languages. Like, not that they're not hard, but they're really they're hard. But I find like I find them fun. Like I
Yeah.
love grammar. I love
Mm.
learning to read and talk and baby speaking and a little bit more speaking. So I was with this brother for about 2 years, 2.5 months, and 4 days a week. Yeah, 4 days a week, um, in the masjid for an hour, hour and a half, no, an hour each time. And the brother was so generous because he knew I just accepted Islam, and here's Muslims for you, right, with good character. I accepted Islam. He knew I had no job, and he didn't charge me because normally he would charge people. He had no other job besides teaching people. People reverts. They're Arab people who are Muslim. Their kids don't speak Arabic. So like he had a really like wide variety of people that he taught. But him knowing I just accepted Islam, and him knowing that I wanted to learn Arabic, him knowing I didn't have a job, he's like, well, it's fine. Just come 4 days a week. We'll sit here for an hour and do what we can do. So again, 2.5 years, him and I were there together for the 4 days a week. I wouldn't say my Arabic is fluent at this point, but it's because it's really it's hard. I'm not gonna lie. It's definitely the
Mm.
hardest language I've ever learned. It's very, very complex.
Mm.
But I would say that I'm at like a advanced level of speaking grammar. Like a lot of the stuff that I read, I understand. 90%. My speaking, if you in the masjid, I understand about 85% of the people talking. My speaking, like being honest, I would say like 75. I can speak. Reading Quran, I would say about pretty much not, because that was like my emphasis. So like him and I really focused on reading and understanding. So I would definitely say reading the Quran was probably about 90, 95%, because that's the kind of Arabic that he taught me. He didn't teach me a dialect, even though he's from Morocco. He taught me the Arabic from the Quran. And
Mashallah.
inshallah, one day, I'm still working on it little by little. I don't go 4 hours, 4 days a week now still, but I definitely still do Arabic. But I'm kind of
Okay.
like, I get a little lazy now because I'm at a point right now where I'm comfortable with everything that I do know with Arabic, and everything. And it's like I had to really push myself to keep on finishing.
Mm. Yeah, I think I also face the same issue because you want to learn a lot of surahs and and all that. So yeah, you need to put a bit of effort in there. Did you have any problems with um, did the church or anything come to you and try to tempt you to come back?
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot. I told you this story. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me, Brother Harold. So yeah, there was this one time where because with this bishop friend of mine, he was a bishop in Rome, and he had said, when he heard I accepted Islam, he kind of he made me an offer, and he says, you know, he thought that I left. Everybody had different stories, It's the way it works, Everybody has their own version of why something happens. So I guess the way that he had heard I wanted to get married or something, which wasn't the truth. Like he thought, like I just wanted to, because again, for those who don't know, Catholic monks, 8.5, 9 years. There's no wife, no kids. There's no women. It's all just religious purity and chastity and celibacy. And so he just thought that maybe I wanted to get a family. Not that I wanted to just be Muslim, but maybe just have a family. So at one point, this bishop friend of mine, who I'm not naming, he's a friend of mine in Rome, and he says to me, he's like, well, you know, he says, you ever? He's like, obviously, brother. He one day we're on the phone talking, not in person, I'm talking on the phone. He's like, and I just accepted Islam, and he's like, maybe like a month of Islam, and he calls me and he's like, if I heard that you're looking for a wife and kids, and maybe the celibacy was getting too hard, and I'm like, well, who told you this? Because it's never been a problem, you know, which it never was. And for me, I never had an issue with any of that kind of stuff. Not having a wife or kids. It's just the mind set I was in. So this bishop friend of mine, when he was talking to me, he says, "Well, brother." He didn't call me brother. Sorry, he called me by my real name. He says, because at this point I'm not in the monastery anymore. He called me Michael, and even though my name is Salah, they would never call me. Even to this day, none of my priest friends, bishop friends, anybody from the past ever calls me this, except Muslims, Salahuddin. So, he's like, well, you do know that the Ukrainian, in the Catholic Church, I'm trying to like make this quick. In the Catholic Church, you have the Roman Rite, which are all celibate priests. And there's a number of different churches that are united to the Catholic Church. So the Roman Rite, which is majority, 90% of the Catholics in the world are Roman Rite Catholics, with the priest celibate, meaning they don't have wife or kids. But there's also another 26 in the Catholic Church. There's 26 other churches that are Catholic churches, but they're not Roman Rite. They're other churches: Byzantine, Ukrainian, Melkite, Syro-Malabar. There's a lot of different other. Again, they're all Catholic. They're just different ways of expressing Catholicism. So the Roman Rite, which makes up the most, is celibate priests, as I said. So this bishop friend of mine, he's like, well, if you're looking for a wife and kids, he's like, why don't you just? He's like, I'll find you a wife, and if you want to have a family, you can have a family, and you could be a Ukrainian Rite Catholic, or the Byzantine Rite Catholic, or a Syro-Malabar Rite Catholic, or a Maronite Rite Catholic, or he went and named not all the 26 other ones, but just some more common ones in the area. If me wanting to have a wife and kids is the issue, and I told him, I said, well, we used to call him, bishops call your eminence. So I said, I'm sorry, your eminence. I really, I didn't. I didn't leave the monastery to look for a wife or kids. But yeah, he definitely offered me a wife and kids.
Okay. Oh, okay. That's probably not. I mean, it's not the real reason why you left. So he might have just give it a shot and try
That's
see
right.
if that was yeah. Yeah. So I think we have we covered all the challenges. Did I miss out anything?
No, I think you hit them all.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So those to all viewers out there, hope this sharing had been beneficial for you. Actually, we are so excited for next week also. Yeah, because
Oh, yeah.
Michael is going to unpack a lot of the Bible to show basically proof from the Bible where Jesus is not divine, and he's going to even look deeper into the Gospel of John, because that's where, you know, out of all the synoptic gospel, yeah, it's the only one that is, try to elevate Jesus up to divinity. So he's going to quote some verses from there and show you with proofs on it. So inshallah, we'll see you in the next Friday's stream, and yeah, hope that this have benefited you all. Brother Salahuddin, anything, Michael? Do you have anything you would like to maybe end off
Well,
with an advice, maybe to, I mean, to those people who maybe are out there looking at Islam, or they're probably people who are even Christians or Catholics or anything. What would you say to them as a parting, words?
well, first off, I guess I would say open your heart and ask God who He really is, and be open to the truth. Like I said, if like I always tell people, because I get a lot of people who say, "I'd never be," Catholic people, priests, monks, lay people that I still talk to, and they say sometimes, I can never be Muslim. I'm like, listen, if Allah could guide me to Islam, and trust me, had to, I was definitely not coming to Islam. That means you have hope. That means there's a chance that He can guide you.
Hmm.
And it definitely be to, of course, tune in next week for the divinity of Jesus, but also, just look at the Bible and open up the Quran and read them together.
Yeah.
And really look at, like I said, for me, that's my experience. That's all I can give on this when I talk about me, is my experience, and just really being open to the truth. When I asked God who you are, He showed it to me. When I asked God, and I didn't say Allah, I didn't say Jesus then, I said God, because I did believe in God. I just wasn't sure who He was anymore. And when I said God, what's the truth? He showed me. When I said God, which one of these books are the uncorrupted scriptures, or which one of them? I didn't say that. I said, which one is your word? He made it clear to me. And if it's hard to put past the the brainwash, the way that we always grow up understanding Christianity, Catholicism, the way that we understand everything, because that's what we were brought up with. But just because we're brought up with something doesn't mean it's right. Everybody in the world, well, majority of people are brought up with something, some religion, and they all believe their religion is the only right religion. Everybody. There's nobody in this world who thinks that everybody, well, unless they're crazy people. To me, they're crazy people. But if you don't believe your religion, Islam, Christianity, Protestantism, Catholicism, Judaism, whatever other religions you want to bring up in the books, you can name them all. We all believe we're right. But of course, well, how do we know we're right? Like even Muslims, not even looking into their own faith. Like that's one thing that I did learn quickly is that there's a lot of, and I hate to say it, may Allah guide them and open their minds, but there's a lot of ignorant Christians and there's a lot of ignorant Muslims that are ignorant of their own Quran and their own Sira and their own hadith and their own prophet and the prophets, you know, or not just memorizing the Quran, but also understanding what this means.
Mm.
So, it's not just a matter of, my everybody believes we're right, but may Allah guide us all. Just again for the Christians, just ask God who He really is,
Yeah.
without thinking, oh well, I already know He's Jesus, or which book? Oh, I already know it's the Bible because I'm Catholic, or Trinity, or is God just one without the Trinity? Oh, it's Trinity because I'm Catholic.
Yeah. I mean, many times people, we say things we don't mean sometimes. So when we just pick off information from the TV or from people on the streets, we ask them, what is Islam or what is Christianity, you get a mix of different answers. And the only way you can really find out the truth is to go straight to the scriptures. I think that's what I think is the best way, because the scriptures is what's on record, right? What is they believe, what they truly believe is actually in the scriptures. So if you were to look at the scriptures, you will come to see the truth itself, instead
You're
of
right.
asking, well,
Right.
what was it about?
That's right. You got
Yeah.
that one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
I mean, like
Okay.
I've heard a lot of priests, for example, who, you'll have a verse from the Bible, and on a Friday, I'm sorry, on a Sunday, one priest will interpret and give a sermon on, this specific Bible verse, and it will be completely different about the same Bible verse with a different priest in a different parish on a different Sunday. So, even what priests, bishops, that's why what Brother Harold said is right, because, even priests can twist it to mean whatever they want. I've heard priests completely have altering, completely differing viewpoints on one Bible verse. And they weren't debating, but just what they said about it. But at the end of the day, you have the Bible. Why? That's how I came to Islam. Again, just my experience. Just what does the Bible say? What does the Old Testament say? What does the New Testament say? What does the Quran say?
MashaAllah. Thank you, brother, so much for sharing today's
Thanks for
topic.
having me.
Just one last thing, because it's a challenge topic. Like, since we're on challenges, I like to challenge you to maybe say a sentence in Greek, and Latin and
Oh,
Italian,
no.
and
I don't
just one.
no. I don't do the Greek and Latin and Italian anymore. No. Sorry. You wish.
Yeah. Or maybe how you say it, good.
No. I don't even do that. I don't do it anymore.
Oh,
No.
okay.
Sorry.
So, okay, no worries.
No.
I thought I could get you to hear, say it in good
If I ever
morning,
see you in person, we're
Yeah.
gonna have to
Yeah.
go at it.
Go at it. Okay. Inshallah. We'll see each other in the US or in Singapore one
Yeah,
day. Yeah.
inshallah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, again, look, I hope I'm sorry this might have took a little bit more time again, but
Yeah.
tune in next Sunday, because my favorite topic to talk about is the divinity of Jesus.
Yeah. And yeah, feel free to check out his books also on Amazon, guys. Yeah. Thank you so
Yeah.
much again, Brother Michael. And may Allah bless you for the rest of the day and for many days ahead. And have a blessed Friday. And to all viewers out there, and to Brother Michael, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.